Apples of Gold in Settings of Silver. Chapter 3. March. God's Timing. 3:33 a.m. alarm. During the last 3 months of 2017 and carrying into 2018, I began waking up several nights a week at 3:33 a.m. It was so bizarre. I mentioned it to Jim. I didn't let it alarm me, but the more it continued, the more I wondered. Things like that never happened to me, and I felt there must be a reason. I was fired on December 20th, 2017, and I started back to college on January 9th, 2018. Our 39th anniversary on February 22nd came in the middle of my first semester, so we decided to wait until spring break to celebrate. Spring break arrived, but Jim reluctantly told me he really wasn't feeling well enough to go out of town for our anniversary like we planned. That wasn't a big deal to me. I told him we could celebrate anytime and anywhere. That Monday, we were eating lunch when Jim looked over at me and told me, "I love you more today than I did yesterday," and I didn't know that was possible. Not 15 minutes later, he indicated his chest hurt and his heart was beating erratically again. I was getting ready to take him to the ER when he collapsed. I called 911 and asked the dispatcher to get the EMTs to our address as soon as possible. I unlocked the door so they could get in and then stayed right by his side, assuring him I loved him. We had been through so many medical emergencies together that it didn't occur to me that he might not make it through this one. I forced myself to stay calm because I knew getting him panicked wouldn't be helpful. The next few hours blurred together as Jim was stabilized and airlifted to Billings for further treatment. Even though he hadn't regained consciousness, I told him I loved him and would meet him in Billings. I spent the entire 2-hour drive praying, not knowing what to say, but needing the reassurance that God was in control. When peace came, I knew no matter what the outcome, it would be okay. By the time I arrived at the hospital, Jim was in ICU, and the doctors were baffled. They could find no blockage, and despite their best efforts, his blood pressure and oxygen levels fell steadily through the night. He passed away around 2:40 a.m. The nurses thoughtfully shut the door and gave me some time alone. I called close family and friends, spent some precious time reflecting on the gift of our life together, then gathered my things and headed to the car. Ice covered the pavement, so I had to take it slow, putting things in the trunk. I finally made my way carefully to the driver's door, crawled in, and sat there, stunned and exhausted. Wearily, I reached for my keys and started the car. Dash lights flickered on, and I glanced down to see the illuminated clock, which read 3:33. Although I haven't awakened at 3:33 a.m. since, it brings me great assurance to know that God knew ahead of time what would happen and cared enough to interact with me to bring encouragement. A short time later, I found Jeremiah 3:33 that says, "Call unto me, and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things you do not know." I accepted the invitation of that verse as confirmation that God had prepared me ahead of time, so I wasn't overwhelmed by the trauma. And as I sought God during the initial period of shock and grieving, He indeed showed me things I didn't know. But I still felt He had arranged the 3:33 alarm to show me something more. Months later, as I sat with a friend waiting for her husband to be placed on hospice, I shared about my 3:33 alarm, and she jumped up and returned with her Bible. She exclaimed, "I know what that means," as she pointed out a scripture in Lamentations 3:33. "For He does not willingly bring affliction or grief to anyone." My heart had finally found the missing piece. God doesn't enjoy seeing anyone go through difficulty or grief, and He is willing to go out of His way to lighten the burden. So often He gets blamed when bad things happen. He wanted me to know the only reason He would allow affliction or grief was to accomplish a higher purpose. Someday I'll understand fully. Until then, I will trust His love and wisdom. Father, thank You that grief is not something You enjoy seeing us walk through. Not only are You with us through every step, but You comfort us in ways that are beyond our understanding. Thank You that nothing happens to us without Your involvement and purpose. I'm so grateful that You care for me.